Good morning and welcome to First Edition, the online ministry of First Community Church. My name's John Gerard. I'm the Minister of Mission and Justice here at this amazing church. We're thrilled to have you join us on this day for this service of worship. We want you to know that no matter who you are or where you are on life's journey, you are welcome and accepted here just as you are. Right now, there's a QR code on the screen. Using the camera function of your smartphone, you can scan that QR code and share several different pieces with us. First, share your attendance. Simply let us know that you are with us today. Through that same QR code, you can share any prayer concerns you bring on your hearts and your minds. And then also using that same QR code, you'll find a link to share your tithes and offerings this day. The message today comes from the Gospel of Luke in chapter 2, verses 41 through 52. It tells the story of Jesus as a child accompanying his parents into Jerusalem for the Passover celebration. At the end of that story, we hear that Jesus' parents return back home. They leave him behind. The sermon title is, "So Now What?" And in that, Reverend Seth Stearns will share a word or two with us about God's sense of awe in our midst. Do you know what it is? Do you know it when you see it? And how will you experience it in this new year? Well, I really enjoyed this message, and I'm glad that we can share it with you together today. Let us enter into worship.
This Christmas time, consider well and bear in mind what our good God for us has done in sending his beloved Son. With Mary holy we should pray to God with love this Christmas day. In Bethlehem upon that morn there was a blessed Messiah born. Near Bethlehem did shepherds keep their flocks of lambs and feeding sheep, to whom God's angel did appear, which put the shepherds in great fear. Prepare and go, the angel said, to Bethlehem, be not afraid, for there you'll find this happy morn a princely babe, sweet Jesus born. With thankful heart and joyful mind, the shepherds went the babe to find. And as God's angel had foretold, they did our Savior Christ behold. Within a manger he was laid, and by his side a virgin maid, attending on the Lord of life, who came on earth to
Well, here we are, just on the other side of Christmas. We have celebrated the beauty, the wonder, the awe of the birth of the Christ child, God with us. So now what? In our text this morning, Jesus and his parents have traveled to Jerusalem for the annual Passover festival. The Passover festival was a deeply symbolic and spiritual event for the Jewish people, filled with rituals of remembrance, hope, awe, and wonder. But the festival had come to an end, and it was time for the long walk back home to Nazareth. But for 12-year-old Jesus, it didn't come to an end. Luke tells us that Mary and Joseph were one day into their journey home following the end of the festival when they realized that Jesus was not in the traveling group. They returned to Jerusalem, and it took 3 days to locate Jesus. Jesus was found in the temple. He was listening and asking questions of the teachers. And they were amazed at the level of understanding that Jesus had of the teachers. Our text this morning ends with Luke's words, "And Jesus increased in wisdom and in years and in divine and human favor." I suspect that 12-year-old Jesus also experienced awe during the Passover festival, but perhaps he didn't see the experience of awe ending when the festival did. So perhaps our more specific question this morning is, after experiencing the profound emotion of awe during Christmas, where might that lead us? What might that mean for us for our long walk home back to Nazareth? This morning, I would like to explore with you this emotion of awe. Researcher and author Dacher Keltner wrote an outstanding book titled Awe, and will serve as the basis of many of my thoughts this morning. But let's begin where all productive conversations should begin, with definitions. Keltner offers us this definition of awe: the state of being in the presence of something vast and mysterious that transcends our current understanding of the world. Now, let's explore what we mean when we use the word vast. Vast can be physical, such as standing next to a 350-foot tall tree. Vast could be a singer's voice filling a large concert hall. Vast could be temporal. A laugh, a smell, a sound that instantly transports us back to some point in our childhood. Vastness can be about ideas, or when an epiphany integrates scattered beliefs and unknowns into a coherent new understanding of the world. Keltner says about vastness, it can be challenging, unsettling, and destabilizing. In evoking awe, it reveals that our current knowledge is not up to the task of making sense of what we have encountered. And so, in awe, we go in search of new forms of understanding. I believe that awe is our pathway to our spiritual development. We grow in our faith when we believe we are always in the presence of something vast and mysterious that transcends our current understanding of the world. Awe is our pathway to wisdom. Awe is our pathway to a renewed and revised reimagining of God. Keltner and his colleagues, they were curious about this emotion of awe, particularly across cultures. So they conducted a study responding, and looking at respondents from 26 different countries. And what they found was that the experience of awe across cultures was generated from 8 different sources. The first source, and the leading source, was not nature or spiritual practices. It was witnessing other people's courage, kindness, strength, and their overcoming challenges. What he came to call moral beauty. I love that term, moral beauty. 6-year-old Ruby Bridges walked into William Frantz Elementary School, accompanied by federal marshals and taunted by angry crowds on November 14th, 1960, when schools in New Orleans, Louisiana were officially desegregated. Barbara Henry was the only teacher who showed up at school, while all the other teachers remained home in protest of desegregation. She instructed the young Ruby Bridges not to speak to the angry people outside of the school. After Ruby arrived inside the school, after making her way through the angry crowd one day, Mrs. Henry said to Ruby, "Ruby, do you remember that I told you not to speak to those people outside?" "Yes, ma'am." "Then why were you speaking to them?" "I wasn't, ma'am." "But Ruby, I saw your lips moving." "Oh, I wasn't speaking to them. I was praying for them." And this was her prayer. "Please, God, try to forgive these people, because even if they say those bad things, they don't really know what they're doing." That is what moral beauty looks like. The second source of awe is collective effervescence. This is when energy is generated by religious groups or some other group experiences. We may experience this at funerals or weddings, bar and bat mitzvahs, graduations, but it's when there's a certain energy that happens to a group that becomes transcendent. Perhaps you've experienced such a thing. The third source of awe is nature. I believe many of us have experienced a sense of awe in nature. The fourth source of awe is music, and I have often been moved to a feeling of awe through the music that we hear here at First Community with the choirs and the musicians. I also have what I call pullover songs. Pullover songs are songs that come on the radio while I'm driving, and I have to pull over. I can't drive because I want to listen to what I am hearing. 2 songs come to mind. The first one was Leader of the Band by Dan Fogelberg, when that was first released. The second was Southern Cross by Crosby, Stills, and Nash. Do you have a pullover song? Was there a song that came on where you had to pull over and just listen? The fifth source of awe was visual design, architecture, buildings, machinery, the geometry of some jewels. The sixth source of awe, spiritual and religious practices. The seventh source of awe, life and death. the source of awe that we feel when we're present at the time of a birth, and the experience of awe that we go through when we're present during the transition of a death. And number 8, the source of awe, epiphanies. When beliefs, values, intuitions, and images unite into a new system of understanding, philosophical insights, scientific discoveries, when all these things suddenly come together, an aha moment. When I first read this list, I was reminded of one of my favorite stories related to Ludwig van Beethoven, because I think it integrates many of these. When Beethoven was a young man, he read Friedrich Schiller's poem, Ode to Joy. For years, it would occupy his mind. The poem was a tribute to freedom, justice, and human happiness. He struggled for over 25 years as to how to bring this poem to music. He knew it had to be a symphony, but at age 52, deaf and in a state of despair, he had not composed a symphony in over 10 years. And no one had ever woven lyric poetry or words into a symphony before. His 9th symphony with the choral finale of Ode to Joy would be his greatest creative and spiritual triumph. He demanded that he himself conduct the orchestra, though another conductor would be provided for backup. The rehearsals leading up to the performance were absolutely disastrous. One of the soloists quitting at the last moment and being replaced by a member of the choir who had memorized the part. Keep in mind, this had never been done before. On the early evening of May 7th, 1824, the Viennese concert hall was filled. In an article written by Maria Popova, she described the performance. Beethoven walked onto the grand stage, faced the orchestra, raised his arms. Despite the natural imperfections of a performance built on such tensions, something shifted as soon as the music, exalted, sublime, total, rose above the individual lives and their individual strife, subsuming every body and every soul in a single harmonious transcendence. She goes on. After the final chord of Ode to Joy resounded, the gasping silence broke into screams of applause. People leapt to their feet, they're waving their handkerchiefs and chanting his name. Beethoven, still facing the orchestra, still waving his arms in delayed internal time of music that only he can hear, noticed none of it until Caroline Unger stood up, took his arm, and gently turned him around. When he faced the audience, they erupted into 4 volcanic bursts of applause. Awe. Keltner tells us awe is a basic human need. I believe we are divinely wired to experience awe. It is in our DNA to experience the vastness and mystery of the divine in many ways. Awe impacts us not only emotionally and spiritually, but physically. Cytokines are small proteins secreted by cells and serve as pro-inflammatories. They're released in our bodies to help fight invading bacteria and viruses, normally on a short-term basis. The problem is that our minds treat social threats like invading pathogens. Stressors like social rejection, shame, being the target of prejudice, chronic stress, loneliness, and threats to loved ones elevate cytokine levels on a long-term basis and produce high levels of chronic inflammation, leading to a myriad of diseases. In a well-controlled study, the effects of increased awe, pride, and amusement on cytokines and inflammation were measured. Of the three, only by increasing experience of awe were the levels of inflammation reduced. Friends, everyday awe can provide a pathway of reducing chronic inflammation and related diseases such as depression, chronic anxiety, heart disease, autoimmune problems, and despair. And not only does the experience of awe positively impact ourselves in every way, it has also been shown to connect us. When we experience awe, we grow in compassion. We grow in our connection with one another. We are in desperate need of awe. Our rates of depression, isolation, despair, fear, and anxiety are far too high. Perhaps we have lost our sense of awe, and perhaps if we rediscover it, it could be life-changing. The question then is, how do we go about experiencing everyday awe on our long journey back to Nazareth? I would offer you 4 simple starting points this morning. Experiencing everyday awe may be simpler and more accessible than you might think. Number 1, seek out moral beauty. Look for those, read about those, watch movies about those who are courageous, kind, strong, and who face challenges with an indomitable spirit. I would add, do not be distracted by those vile, divisive, and malignantly narcissistic voices in our culture. There is no experience of awe to be had there. Number 2, engage in this faith community as fully as you can with others who are seeking everyday awe to experience what Keltner calls collective effervescence. Energy is created as we help one another experience everyday awe. I see it every day in this church. Number 3, connect with nature. Get outside, directly or indirectly. Watching nature shows on TV or online, here's the thing. Studies show if we watch nature shows on TV or online, it triggers the same biological effect in our brains and our bodies as if we were actually out in nature seeing those things. Google best nature shows, and you will have an instant list of wonders to expose yourself to see what is happening on our planet. And our bodies, our brains, our biochemistry will respond to that. I invite you to go buy a magnifying glass and go look at things that you look at every day differently. Check out what's called macro photography. Macro photography are these folks who are going around the woods and the forest, and they're taking these close-up photographs of insects. You'll never look at an insect the same way again. We are blessed to be here in Central Ohio and have the Franklin Park Conservatory. I would invite you to stroll slowly through the Franklin Park Conservatory and take your magnifying glass. Number 4. Walk, slow down. Neil King Jr. in his book, American Ramble, delightfully documents his walk from his front door in Washington, D.C. to New York City. The interactions that he has with the landscape and the strangers that he meets along the way could never have happened had he been traveling at faster speeds. As he puts it, the world looks very different going 2 miles an hour than it does going 60 miles an hour. I don't believe that everyday awe can happen when we're in a hurry. Nipun Mehta is from Silicon Valley. In 2005, he and his wife of 6 months decided to go on an awe walk, a walking pilgrimage in India. They sold their belongings and bought 2 one-way tickets to India. Their plan was to survive on a budget of $1 per day for both of them. This meant that their survival would rely completely on the kindness of strangers. They ate whatever food was offered to them and slept at whatever place was offered to them. They walked 622 miles. When asked what they learned, Nipun frames the experience using the acronym WALK, W-A-L-K. W, witness. When you walk, you see more. A walking pace is the speed of community. High speeds facilitate separation. They realized how much they could learn by bearing witness to the villagers' way of living. They learned how much more they could witness in the world around them through the pace of walking. A, accept. The Buddhists refer to this as equanimity, accepting what is as opposed to insisting on how you want things to be. This can be a source of significant spiritual growth. As we seek to find the meaning in what is, instead of trying to make what is what it isn't. This also keeps us grounded in truth and honesty. L, love. The kind of love that knows only one thing, to give selflessly and purely with no strings attached. As Nipun puts it, when we take stock of what we have, we almost always make accounting errors. We forget that our most priceless offerings are our attention, our insight, and our compassion. They found that extremely poor villagers who couldn't even afford their own meals would borrow food from neighbors to feed them. And when they tried to refuse, the villagers would simply say, "To us, the guest is God. This is our offering to the divine in you that connects us to one another." K, know thyself. Nipun shares that wisdom teachers through the ages have taught us that when we serve others unconditionally, we shift from a me to we mindset, and that we then connect more deeply to one another. This gives us a quietness of mind that allows us to see clearly who we are and how we can live in harmony in the world. Friends, Christmas is over. The Passover festival has come to an end. So now what? It is time for us to make the long journey back to Nazareth. But we can walk knowing that we can choose to be in a state of being in the presence of something vast and mysterious that transcends our current understanding of the world and of the divine. The Christmas message is God with us. We are always surrounded by opportunities to experience awe. On our journey back to Nazareth, we can walk with one another, and we can walk with our God in a state of awe. We can experience everyday awe beginning with this day. May it be so. Amen.
Little Lamb who made thee, dost thou know who made thee, gave thee life and bid thee feed by the stream and o'er the mead, gave thee clothing of delight, softest clothing, woolly bright, give thee such a tender voice, making all the vales rejoice. Little Lamb who made thee, dost thou know who made thee? Little Lamb, I'll tell thee. Little Lamb, I'll tell thee. He is called by thy name, for he calls himself a lamb. He is meek and he is mild. He became a little child. I a child and thou a lamb. We are called by his name. Little Lamb, God bless thee.